joining us back here at Terrificon. He is back as an Emmy-winning actor, you know, from the Goonies, the Sopranos, The Fugitive. By the way, we are celebrating 60 years of Daredevil. If in case you haven't been able to tell all weekend long at Terrificon, he was in the feature film. Let's give a huge Terrificon welcome to Joe Pantoliano. Join us here. Hey. Play one of these dealies. There you go. Who's your buddy?
Oh, this is Delilah. Delilah is a rescue. She was a puppy mill mom. She had 2 litters, and at 2 they were going to destroy her. And my daughter works for a rescue in New Jersey, and we were going to foster parent her. But then I fell in love with her, and she's a good puppy. She's not used to being around a lot of people, you know, because she lived in a cage for a couple of years, and then when we got her, she didn't even know what stairs were. It was brutal.
I saw she was a little hesitant on these ones here, so that sticks with them. Yeah.
Just you know, unfamiliar territory freaks her out.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I was able to.
Have you fostered dogs before? Is this the first?
My daughter has, and we, you know, never from a rescue.
Okay.
So she's our first rescue. We have 2 other dogs that are Shih Tzu Labs with her. They were my wife's colleagues. Her dogs had puppies, and so we took 3 from the litter. My daughter had one of them, and the other 2, so the 3 of them live with us. But when we travel, we can't take them with, and I was just in LA for just over 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I only got back on Monday.
I'm just curious because we got a rescue dog as well too, but I know a lot of people that do like shelters, so they'll take them in, they'll take them in temporarily, and then they'll find them, you know. How tough is that though? Do you become attached to the little doggies? And how tough is that to give them back?
But, you know, it's awfully tough because I've never given one back.
Yeah. Just keep them in. Yeah. I think that would be the toughest thing for me. It would be like, oh, I'll give it a good home. All right, this is the good home. You're already used to it. You know where the steps are. So, you know, I'm like that. When you were here in 2022, so welcome back. Welcome back to Terrificon. It's great to have you back here again. We talked about, well, obviously we talked about like Goonies. Are you okay if we talk more about Goonies today? We just love talking about Goonies.
Sure, you know, whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, and we do have a microphone over here, so if you've got questions, please feel free to jump on the mic. Again, I've done this, I can nerd out all day long. But I did ask you at the time about Goonies 2. So I'm sure you've heard about Goonies 2. There's an interest in it. There's maybe people that would like to see a Goonies 2 or what that would be. I think at the time you said there's certainly an interest a couple of years ago, but it's just like, but you wasn't solidifying. I don't know, is there anything? Can you give us any hope? Is there anything?
No, I had dinner with Jeff Cohen, who played Chunk. And Jeff is now an industry attorney. In fact, he now represents Keith Kwan.
Yes. That's right.
Among others. He's very successful showbiz attorney. And we were talking about Warner Brothers. I mean, all of the studios are in so much trouble. Financial, you know, Paramount just got bought out. They shut down their TV division. There's major layoffs. I just was working in Los Angeles and talking to the crew. You know, 50% of the people are out of work. Just to live in the Los Angeles area is incredibly expensive. And, you know, it's like starting over. You can say, okay, well, you're a production designer or you're a set dresser. You can work everywhere. Well, the industry has grown even from when I started. You know, when I started, in the early 70s, the idea of being in the entertainment world was elusive, unattainable. You know, my parents were like, what are you, crazy? Who do you think you are? You can't be an actor. And then with shows, with the success of bringing, like Rona Barrett, the celebrity talk shows on TV where they're interviewing celebrities, and then HBO with Entourage, and people were watching that show and thinking, hey, that would be fun to be a celebrity's assistant. So the industry grew. Agencies are falling apart. You know, when I went to Hollywood, there were like 4 or 5 agencies, big agencies, the William Morris, the unattainable agencies. You know, the idea of just making a living, trying to make a living. And in Hollywood, you can't make a living. It's not good enough. You got to make a killing. And you're competing with other countries because they create these tax incentives. I just worked on a show in Vancouver. So in order to do a Goonies, and they've spent millions developing the Goonies sequel over the last 35 years. Written scripts.
You've seen them? You've seen the script?
No, a couple of years ago, somebody, a very successful showrunner writer, had pitched Dick Donner before he passed away. And Dick and Steven Spielberg gave him permission to reach out to some of the actors, I guess. He reached out to Robert Davi and I and explained the opening of how the opening of the sequel would work. But, you know, they don't make movies like that anymore. It was all practical. It was all real. It was done on film.
The ship was real. They built a ship. You guys crawled all over that thing.
Yeah, it was from the blueprint of Captain Blood with Errol Flynn. It was on the same soundstage.
Wow.
So, you know, Josh Brolin, how do you get Josh Brolin to come back? You know, pay him a fortune.
But I think he's gone on talk shows and he loves the Goonies. Like, you think, like, maybe he wouldn't, but like, he goes and he just talks about it with such joy. And it just seems like everybody wants to do it. And I think I had heard, like, maybe it's the kids of the Goonies, maybe, like, they could, and then the Goonie parents have to come in or something. Like, how would
they come up with all?
You've heard a bunch of different.
Every one of those scenarios.
Yeah. And which did you prefer? Like, did any of them make you go, oh, that would be really fun to do?
You know.
And these are fanboy questions. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't have a dog in the race. I mean, if they were able to come up with an idea and they could get everybody to come back,
that's it. That
would be like, like winning the lottery. You know, to be able to. You know, I've been a part of some very successful franchises, right? Bad Boys. I just did Bad Boys 4. You know, I did 2 Martial movies with Tommy Lee Jones. You know, The Fugitive. And when those movies were being made, I think Indiana Jones is the first serialized version, right? But before that, you made a movie and that was it, I think. I don't recall.
Well, Star Wars probably sneaked in. Probably Star Wars and
before
Indiana Jones, and that was it. Yeah.
Star Wars was probably the first then.
Yeah.
I mean, with the serialized in the movies, they've always had serialization. Flash Gordon in the 30s. You know, Saturday matinees.
Yeah.
But now it's you know it's so hard to make a good movie. You know, to make a movie of merit, and it seems to me that a lot of these studio movies, they all look the same.
Yeah.
I can't even tell the difference. the formula is all the same.
The CGI, especially, yeah, it looks like video game a lot of times.
Now that they're doing things like, after the strike, when I went back to work, there was the writer's strike and then the actor's strike. And as soon as I went back, I was working on the Marvel show. And they said, what we're doing, we have to do the plates. So I was like, what's a plate? And they use these silver balls and they film like the big wide shot. If they wanted to do this, they put the camera here and they would just pan. And eventually they'll be able to use those as sets. So in the very near future, I'm going to be working on a green screen stage. This will all be green or blue. Usually it's the color of that lad in the back, that lime green.
Yep.
Shirt. You. That's like I just did something where there was the flats. We shot it outside. The backdrop was, California redwoods, and the green screen was 1.5 times the height of this, and probably twice the size of this, all the way around. And they'll CGI a background and a river and a lake. So they, and all of the new sound stages that they're building in New Jersey, in Queens, all of the states that have these tax credit incentives, where you'll have that, and it's like when you go to New York City and you see those big advertising and billboards that can change, or at baseball games. You'll press that, and this will all immediately become whatever you want. You could be on the top of Mount Everest, and then this could be a desk. They could turn this into the Oval Office.
Well, I've heard actors talk about doing that because prior to this, it would be acting against the tennis ball. Here's a big giant monster coming in, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. But now they can recreate these environments. They're virtual, but at least it gives you a point of reference depth.
But you're back to my theater training, where you're using your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
In the theater, when I was training, if I was doing a play where it was the dead of winter, and so my entrance is, I'm shaking the snow off and I'm talking about how cold it is. You got to recreate that, sensually. Throughout my career in the movies, if it was cold out, you shot it, it was cold out. You didn't have to, that was the one thing less you had to act about. No acting required. It really is cold.
Yeah. You would have to do that on this platform, by the way, because it is freezing up here right now.
Yeah, I was watching on Turner the other day. They were showing Agnes of God with Anne Bancroft, Meg Tilly, and Jane Fonda. And there's a scene with Jane Fonda and Anne Bancroft outside, and you can see the steam coming up, and you can sense, that both of them are freezing their ass off. They're just trying to look normal, they're trying to not shake. I mean, you can actually see Anne Bancroft's teeth rattling. Yeah. Well, to be able to create that, you're going to have to do it, you're going to have to act it sensorially. So it's a fascinating time, but it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs. A lot of people are going to be out of work. And if that's happening in show business, that's going to happen across the board everywhere.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where AI takes everything and you go from. Did I hear you say it was Marvel? Did I hear you say Marvel? Okay. Is that something now you're doing?
That's all you're going to hear. That's the other thing they have. What do they call it, NDAs?
Yeah, okay.
You can't say anything.
Yeah.
My age, I had to sign.
Because it's my job to continue to do this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You keep going. I enjoy telling you fuck this.
You and most people that I know, you would not be the first, and you definitely won't be the last.
I registered, I had to read something, and the agent, and also that's the other thing, they don't talk to you anymore. Used to be on the phone and call you up. Say, listen, you got the job. And now it's all done in emails. And so he said, well, what'd you think of the script? And I said, I can't tell you what I thought of the script. I signed it in the end.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
It's very,
TV feature?
What's
Are
that?
you allowed to say if it's television or feature? You can't say that. That would get you in trouble. Because they do both now. There's Marvel stuff everywhere. Yeah. New character, established comic book character. Yeah, all right. But listen, I'm just, the back of my hair standing on the back of my neck here is just knowing you're in a Marvel project. Because another Marvel project. We're going to talk about the other one in a little bit. But just that you're in there. Are you having fun doing it? Are you enjoying it? That's not in the NDA. Are you enjoying it?
You know, I'm still enjoying it, but I just did something that wasn't the thing you mentioned. I was working on something else I can't talk about.
Those things we love.
It was an announcement. I did I just worked on an episode of Dexter, the prequel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I had a sequence, like a rough house sequence, stunts involved, bouncing into furniture, that kind of thing. And, stunt double and a stunt double rehearsal. I'm going to be set free next month. So I'm feeling it. I'm excited. I enjoy going to work. I enjoy the fact that I'm still able to work. And I get a kick out of it. But, when you've been lucky enough to work as much as I have, you see, you can spot experience immediately, and you can spot inexperienced just as quickly. And I actually wrote a note to my director yesterday because I thought it was night shooting, in Pasadena. It was 2 days before the earthquake, but it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was, running down the street in my underwear. And I was grumpy, it was like, and some of the stuff that, I had to, trip and roll and, so they used my stunt guy for that, but then on the tighter versions, they need you to do it. And I did it a couple of times, and I didn't want to do it again, so I didn't do it. But, I felt like it's my job to do it.
Yeah.
That's what they pay me to show up. They need me in a piece of it,
Right.
and they need to do it, 4 or 5 or 6 times. And it's my responsibility to give them that.
This is maybe where you get AI to work for you because you let the other guy do it, and then they just AI your face over it.
That's what they're going to do.
That's what they're going to have to do. Yeah, let them do the work.
But it's a fine line because on another couple of shows I shot, they wanted to, what do they call it, digitize me?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they call it?
Like DH or?
They wanted to like scan me.
Oh, okay. So like you're making an action figure of somebody, they'll scan everything.
They want to scan.
And they can do whatever they want.
And I would, I said no.
Yeah.
Because they could then warehouse that.
Right.
Like the set.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be making movies for the next 200 years.
I have no grievance of them using my likeness as long as they pay me for it,
Yes.
as long as I own it.
Yes.
I don't want to give it away to some studio.
Well, that was the second point of the strike last year, so I think hopefully they've got all that worked out. And I think I heard you just say that you have a Marvel action figure coming out. I don't know if I read that completely wrong. Yeah, I think that's what I heard. Can we have audience question here? You tell us your name and where you're from.
My name is Scott. I'm from New Hampshire.
Hey, Scott.
I actually have 3 questions, if I may.
Sure, we got time.
Bad Boys, obviously the first 2 were only years apart, and the last 2 were 4 years apart. But between that 17 years, what was it like going back to that after 17 years?
It was wild. It was great. I mean, the third one was without Michael Bay, you know, Dylan Bilal, the new directors, but like Jerry Bruckheimer and you know, and Will's production company. So on the third one, I was you know, working for Will and Jerry, and it was great fun. And everybody, you know, has grandkids and kids, and you know, Will's got his family and all of his friends, and he's incredibly loyal. You know, so the makeup and hair team has been him since Fresh Prince. And you know, Martin's sister, I got to know, you know, of course I know Martin, but I got to know his sister who, you know, visiting over the years. I met her on the first one, I met her on the second one. You know, and that's a real luxury. That's a real gift when you're lucky enough to be a part of that. And working with people that we were all starting out together.
Right, my second question is I'm a huge fan of Broken Leisure, Kevin Heffernan and Steve Levy. Been watching Tacoma FD. Is working on that, or was working on that as long as it seemed like it would be?
I had a good time, yeah. I really like working with those guys. I like that kind of silly humor. You know, it's the closest thing I'll ever get to, like working with the Three Stooges or Abbott and Costello. It's that kind of crazy humor, and Lemmy and Kevin. You know, Kevin's from West Haven. You know, so they're just regular folks that work hard and have wild imaginations.
And the last question, this will be a quick one. On U.S. Marshals, did they let you keep the purple tracksuit?
Somebody else just asked me that. I'm downsizing, so I got rid of a lot of memorabilia I've collected over the years, but I didn't. That's one thing I didn't collect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't even remember the purple tracksuit.
You tell me, I find you a very funny actor, but you scared the crap out of me as the villain in The Matrix. What was your headset? You're like the scariest villain. And what were you thinking of?
Oh, God. You know, it's so hard to answer these things that happened 30 years ago. I'm just happy that he made you uncomfortable. You know, when I looked at that character in the scope of things, it's so funny, I saw Keanu earlier today. I haven't seen him in 15 years. And it was so nice to see him. But when I was working on that, working with Wachowskis, you know, and I don't know if it's clear when you see that movie, but Cypher also had a choice. You know, he was also taken from the Matrix and given a choice to see the real world or not, and made a choice. You know, and I come to the conclusion that I was going to play him as the most human person. You know, if you look at the Matrix and all of those characters that are following Morpheus, it's a cult. It's a cult of personality because they are following someone based on a mythology. So that's something you can taste and you can see, right? He's saying to you that this is not real. This is fake, but you're not gonna know unless you make a choice to take the pill. And so based on the behavior of those characters, Trinity and Mouse, and the way that they followed him, I chose that Cypher had doubt. And I don't know if it's clear when you see the movie, but there've been 4 or 5 ones, right? That were killed by the agents. So Cypher has decided that he's not going to believe Morpheus. He's angry at Morpheus. He believes that he sold him a bill of goods. He's also in love with Trinity, and that's never going to happen because he can see that she loves Neo. And he feels like he's made a terrible mistake. And then he's given an opportunity to correct that mistake by betraying the people he loves. But given an option that in that betrayal, he'll have no memory of ever doing anything wrong. He'll be reinstated into the Matrix as someone who is important and wealthy and famous, right? And never knowing that it's fake, that it's not real, right? And I always thought the reason why people, that fans of the Matrix, villainized Cypher, traitor, you're the traitor. You know, he's Judas. So he sold him for a bag of gold, but Judas, had he not committed suicide, would have had to live with that for the rest. And without a Judas, you don't have a Jesus Christ. So the whole idea of mythology and Cypher, I mean, what would you have done?
I think it was brilliant because why it was so chilling is you made us see him as a real person like us, with an evil side and a good side.
Another buddy cop movie that we didn't get to talk about the last time you were here. I want to jump, if you don't mind, I want to jump back all the way back to 1986 with Running Scared. I just happened to just, fantastic movie. I've heard Sweet Freedom, Michael McDonald came on it, and I was like, you know what? I haven't seen this movie in such a long time. I want to pop it in and see if it holds up. My goodness, does that thing hold up? Can you give us any memories of?
Oh yeah,
because it's like the two guys you never made cops, Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines. It's like you get the dancing guy, you get the funny guy from the sitcom. You would never think they would be these like hard-boiled cops, and then you come in the middle of this is this sort of crazy comic relief thing. I don't even know. It's just, it holds up.
I had so much fun on that, and we shot a lot of the interiors at MGM, when it was still MGM, now it's Sony. All of these studios are now owned by electronics companies. Isn't that weird? It's like Citizen Kane all over again. It's like, you know, you have your hand in everything. But anyway, so we were at MGM and we shot a lot of the interiors. And then we did the exteriors in Chicago, about 5 weeks of exteriors. And I used to run on the lake, and they had these, in all the hotels, these glass revolving doors, because when it gets cold and windy in Chicago, if you use a regular double door, it gets blown off the hinges. They nail those down when the winter comes. And I remember when, toward the end of October, I was going out for my run, and I went through the glass door, and that cold wind hit me in the face, and I never even stopped. I just kept going back.
Because you guys are shooting in the winter. Check your earlier point. It's like you're going to shoot in the winter.
Yeah, it was extremely cold. And we had all of the stuff in the cop car, you know, where my character was sitting in the back seat between the two of them. And it was so cold. It was like 20 below, and it was really windy. And so when they were changing lenses on the camera, we all decided to just stay in the car because they had the heater in the car. And I was just, you know, listening to Billy Crystal tell stories of how we met Mickey Mantle, and Gregory was telling stories when, you know, he was with Hines and Dad, and then his dad retired, and then he and his brother Maurice were, you know, just hoofers. And he told a great story where they got a call that there was an injury, the two dancers on a tour with Judy Garland, and they had to go upstate New York to Albany for one night. And they took the train up there, and they got to the theater, and they were supposed to have like a 15-minute rehearsal with Judy Garland, but she never showed up. And they were like insulted, and so they planned to screw her up. You know, the choreographer gave them the moves, but they decided they were going to teach her a lesson. And the song was "Me and My Shadow," and she's singing the song. She goes stage left and comes out with one of the dancers, stage right, and comes out with the other, and they do the routine, and then the same thing goes back, stage left, and disappears stage right. And Greg said that they tried everything to screw her up, but every move that they made, she just naturally went with it. She improvised with them, and she, you know, and I don't even know. He doesn't even know if she ever even thought it was intentional, because they never met her. So it was like she didn't show up for rehearsal, and then the show was over, and they danced with her, but they never met her after the show.
That's fantastic. And by the way, in the car is my favorite scene, because you're like, they're off doing something, arresting somebody, and you're in the car grabbing the police radio, and then you're like, coming on, cars, coming in, like, and Crystal comes in, just levels you through the window. It's a fantastic movie. I mean, you guys had a blast. Even though it was the dead of winter in Chicago, I mean, I guess you guys had a blast doing that.
Yeah, everybody did.
Yeah, that's a fun film to watch. It's the 60th anniversary of Daredevil. The last time you were here, I didn't get a chance to ask you much about it.
So the comic book Daredevil has been around for 60 years?
Yep. And you're part of the history.
I'm older than the comic book.
You're part of the history. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences? How did you get involved with the Daredevil movie? And by the way, when you watch the director's cut, you're in so much more of it. Like, I know there was a lot of Ben's backstory or Ben's story that goes on that sort of got jettisoned. What are your memories of filming that? Because at least we have them all on the director's cut.
I don't, you know.
I know we're going back a little bit, but...
Well, I vaguely remember, I was working on The Sopranos, and I remember the sequence. If you've seen The Sopranos, there's a scene where my character's son gets an arrow in his chest because he's catching arrows, and Ralph is running. He was in the tub. He was about to take a shower, so he's running through the field, and he runs down to his boy, and he cradles him, and I had to catch a plane, because I had to shoot the next morning on Daredevil. And so we did that, and I changed in the car. I gave him the Ralphie wig, and I got in the car, and I put my clothes on and left the Ralphie clothes in the car. They dropped me off at the airport. I took the red eye. I reported to work the following morning. I worked with Ben and Kevin Smith that day, and then I got on a plane and I flew back to New York, where I had to work again on The Sopranos, and then I went back. So I just remember everybody being, nice and enjoying the experience. And Kevin Feig was an assistant to Avi Anard, and my friend Gary Foster, whose father David had produced Running Scared. Gary was producing this. I knew Gary when he was a PA on The Mean Season, which was also a David Foster production. So it's like a village. It's the people you meet on the way up that are growing and eventually going to be colleagues or people you work for. And also Colin.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah, what was that character? His character?
Bullseye.
Bullseye. Yeah, he was great. I got to know him probably better, and I had a lot of laughs with him.
I was gonna say, it's weird, because you don't have many scenes, but I don't even know if you have any scenes with them. I'm trying to remember, but it's like, so you didn't have much time to prep for this then? If you were bouncing back and forth between The Sopranos, were you familiar with the character of Daredevil from the comics? Had you read them growing up at all? You're playing a journalist. Did you get a chance to even prep as a journalist? I know sometimes actors will, follow reporters around or something like that. Or did you just kinda-
I was a photo journalist on a movie called The Mean Season, and I really didn't have much time to prep. And, he was more of an expositional, character.
I think originally he was supposed to narrate. Like in an earlier version of the film, I think your voice was supposed to come in and narrate.
I just don't.
No, that's fair. Listen, I go back through this.
Maybe that's why I'm not in the series. I just don't remember.
It's so interesting because it's like a lot of that stuff, like Coolio was in it, and there's like a lot of courtroom stuff. Like you're in the court, like you're following Ben Affleck's.
And am I wrong that my character knows, is the one that knows that he's the...
He figures it out. I mean, basically when you watch the director's cut, you're following him like sort of the whole way around. You know Matt Murdock is involved in this somehow. And then by the time you get to the end, you're like, there's my Pulitzer, and then you just like hit delete on the whole story, and you're just like on his side for the whole thing. But it's just here because there's so much with Coolio, there's a backstory.
I gotta say...
There's a murder in a subway, you're the one that flicks the DD catches, the double D catches fire. And there's all that going on. Have you seen the movie? Did you get a chance to see the movie when it came out?
I don't think I did.
Okay, because you probably would have been like, where's all my scenes? Because they do try to get to the action pretty quick with Electra, with Jennifer Garner.
I knew Jennifer Garner was in it.
Okay. But you remember filming with Kevin Smith, because there's a really cool scene where
It was like
if anything cool happened, if you find anything cool...
what do you call it? The court
The more, you're in the more, yes. If you find anything cool, give me a call. And he's like, I found this. And you're like, and it turns out it's Matt Murdock's cane and it's Daredevil's weapon. Okay, no worries. Listen, these are all fanboy questions, so I just was curious, if you had any favorite memories about filming that. So now you can go back and watch the director's cut and watch all of your scenes.
Yes.
It's a much better version of it. And you've apparently re-entered the Marvel universe for us, so maybe it has something to do with Daredevil. Who knows?
I can tell you that it has nothing to do with it.
With Daredevil, okay, that's fair. And so there's a whole other Daredevil, and he'll be here on Sunday, and so you get to meet. You can meet the new Daredevil. You can make new memories with Daredevil, with Charlie Cox. That'll be cool. I'm sure he'll be right next to you. I do want to ask you, you did found a nonprofit organization, No Kidding, Me Too, correct? Can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of that and how we can know more about that?
Well, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I was really in bad shape. In 2012, around there. It was after 9/11. Something happened, and the whole world, it kicked up all this emotional dust from past trauma that I didn't know I had. It was a rough 5 or 6 years. And so when I finally got the help that I needed, and I was working through all of that, at some point I couldn't work, and I had a Wheaton Terrier Bogey, who was like, just before they had service dogs, they called him that, but he was my service dog unofficially, and if I had meetings, I would take them to New York. I couldn't get in the car unless I had them in the car with me. And when I was able to get back to work, when you work on a job, they take an insurance policy out. They want to make sure you're healthy. So if you got sick, the insurance company's betting that you're not going to get sick or die. And so and it's just a generic, they take your blood pressure, it's more questions like, do you smoke, do you drink? And they asked if I was on any prescription medication. And I said, yeah, well, I take Lipitor because I have a history of heart disease. And I'm taking the same dosage of an antidepressant because I have a history of depression in my family. So a couple of days later, my lawyer calls and he said, we got a problem with this. The insurance company is not going to insure you because you're taking an antidepressant. So you got to sign a waiver. If you have a breakdown and you cause a slow down or stoppage to the work, it's going to be on you. And I said, well, that's like, a day's work would render me bankrupt if I missed a day. I said, what about my heart? He says, what? I said, well, I take medicine because I have a history of heart disease. What if I have a heart attack? He said, heart attack, they'll cover that. I said, why would they cover that and not my brain? I don't understand why they're discriminating against one of my vital organs. So that pissed me off. I signed the paper because I needed to work. And, I started talking about it. It was just kind of rolling around there. And I talked to a lot of my friends that are high-profile movie stars, and they would say, oh, I just don't tell them. Because a lot of people were on that, and it wasn't cool. In those days, people didn't talk about that. If you had a bipolar disorder and you're addicted to cocaine, a substance, they would, and you had to go to rehab, they would call it alcohol, because alcohol was more, being an alcoholic was less.
It's socially acceptable.
Yeah, more socially acceptable. So I started talking about it, and I decided I'd start this nonprofit to talk about it, just not to be in the dark, because I didn't know, I thought that I was the only person in the world that had this, depression. And once I was working on it, working through it, I realized that it wasn't permanent, that it was ebbs and flows, and I learned how to deal with it when it does come. I learned better coping mechanisms. Up until then, my coping mechanism was alcohol and biking. I became addicted to biking, and it was gnarly. And so, but now, the idea, people are talking, celebrities are talking about it all the time, and I'm rather grateful and proud that we were able to begin that conversation. And that's what No Kidding Me Too is all about, is when you mention it, and people would always say, oh, no kidding, me too, my brother, no kidding, me too, my sister, me, And there's a lot, I still do a lot of talks, mental health talks. The kids, teenagers, suicide rates are going up. And, the clinical definition of anxiety is losing pleasure in things that you used to enjoy doing. Being anxious when there's nothing to be anxious. Being depressed when there's physical evidence of something that that situational depression. But as our country and the world, there's so much going on. We're all in a situation of depression. We just don't know what's going to happen. We don't, with AI, this is the first time in our generation. This is the first time in the history of humankind where we don't know what the world is going to be like in 20 years. If you were born in 1950, your father was a baker, you're going to be a baker. Mechanic, you're going to be a mechanic. And now it's happening so fast, we're just flying by the seat of our pants, and we're seeing our friends being laid off left and right. And so we are reacting appropriately. We are appropriately depressed. we are appropriately, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's removing that stigma, I think, is what you've been able to do, and you and a lot of those in the entertainment industry that you've gathered together.
Yeah, and it feel less alone when you talk
Yeah.
about it. You know?
Yeah.
That's the first step into management.
Well, we're not alone, and that's the thing, when you can surround yourself with others that can help out, so you need that support system. We're so glad you're doing that. Yeah, the nonprofit organization is No Kidding Me Too, so check it out. My goodness, I mean, we can talk about that, your career is unbelievable. Happy pre-40th anniversary to the Goonies. I think is next year. That would be a great time to announce the Goonies too. We would love to see that.
That'd be nice.
Whatever Marvel project that I'm going to try to drag out of you for the rest of the weekend, we are loving that that's going to happen. We're going to love seeing you in this. Hey, let's give it up. Yeah!
Hey, now